All right, hey, pushers. We're back in this series regarding the early republic, and we're going to focus on the foreign policy of the early republic during the Washington and Adams administration. And it's actually going to be the foreign policy that's going to dominate the two parties at this time. It's really going to be the focus of attention for the Washington and Adams administration. And it's going to have implications on domestic issues and domestic relationships, especially between the two political factions, the political parties, the Federalists and the Republicans, quote unquote Democratic Republicans. So let's let's get into it. Like, what is the problem? What are going to be the issues when it comes to our foreign policy? Okay, we have two situations going on. Let's contextualize it. We have interests that want to foster relations with Great Britain. Yes, we did fight a revolutionary war against Great Britain. There is that animosity. However, Alexander the Man Hamilton, Secretary of the Treasury, he believes that continued and foster trade with Great Britain is going to be key to the prosperity of the American economy. Britain is one of our primary, most lucrative trading partners. We have established these relations for over a century, right? When we were colonies, now that we're states, we understand the animosities. However, it makes sense. It is practical to continue these commercial relations with the British. They are a source of our manufactured goods. They have a market for our raw materials. Let's continue to foster that. This is key to our economic prosperity. That makes sense. However, there are some other issues that have been brewing. It's the French Revolution. The ideals of the American Revolution have transplanted over to France, where those inspired by the American Revolution have decided to try to modify their government, their institutions, their absolute monarchy. They they went from having an absolute monarchy to beheading the king and the queen, and they've established a republic. And this French Revolution has taken a radical turn. And Jefferson applauds it. Jefferson, he's against these tyrannies. He's against these old ancient regimes, and he's been kind of going over there and promoting it as ambassador to France. And he comes back to the United States, and he regales everyone about what's happening in France and how the American Revolution has inspired the transition over there in France. But it's a different story. Why does the French Revolution get so violent? I think we should understand this. Why is it not as reflective of the American Revolution? Yes, the American Revolution turned into a war, but was there such internal violence? Did it get to the point where people are beheaded? To behead the king and the queen. Wow, what's going on here? It's because the revolutionary ideals in America, they were preserving these familiar institutions, these representative forms of government, the preservation of natural rights, these predominantly British political traditions. That's what they were preserving. So it wasn't necessarily a major change in these institutions and these customs. But in France, it's an absolute monarchy. There is an ancient regime. There is a very rigid social structure. There is the clergy. The church is a powerful institution. The nobility is, again, a powerful institution. The king, right? The monarchy, a powerful institution. Again, we go back to it's an absolute monarchy, and we are taking a complete 180 here of establishing a republic. You're quickly and violently transforming the traditional social and cultural and political norms. That's crazy. And that can explain why it becomes so radical, why it becomes so violent. Well, Jefferson despite all that, he recommends to Washington as Secretary of State to support the French Revolution. Because here's what's also happening. When the King and the Queen of France were beheaded, and poor Queen Antoinette, she wasn't French. She was Austrian. It was the marriage to King Louis XVI was a political alliance between Austria-Hungarian Empire and France, and the French beheaded her. You know what that means, right? That's war. So Austria-Hungary declares war against France out of revenge, right? But so does Prussia, and so does Great Britain. Why? Because those powers, those monarchical powers, don't want the revolution in France to spread to their neck of the woods. And let's take advantage of a vulnerable France. Let's try to take some of their territory. Let's weaken them. Maybe we could even conquer them. Here's our grand opportunity. And actually, surprisingly, France is holding its own. It's actually doing pretty well, relatively speaking. Think about it. France is at war. It's surrounded by its enemies on the border, and it's going through its own internal domestic, civil war in a sense, right? It's got, and it's still surviving. It's still surviving. And that's when they call for the Americans, and they say, like, revolutionary brothers, help us in our dire need, right? Help us against our enemies, our common enemies in monarchy and absolute regimes, fight for our principles and democratic institutions. And that's where Jefferson comes back to Washington and says, let's support them. And Washington's all like, yeah, I don't know about that. Hold up. And that's where he's listening to Hamilton. Hamilton's like, not a good idea. I don't agree with it. I think we need to stay out of the fight. Washington does. He also agrees that the United States is not prepared for this. The United States doesn't really have much of an established army. It doesn't really have much of a navy. Barely. It's nothing almost. We're still trying to, get ourselves off the ground here. We're not in a position to fight European wars, especially to this scale. I'm sorry. And this is where we get a situation called Citizen Genet. He's the ambassador to the United States from France, and he's going around the country, and he's trying to inspire more support for the French, trying to convince the people, going to the people as an ambassador to the United States, and try to put pressure on the Washington administration and Congress to try to support France, which, by the way, that breaks protocol. That's not what ambassadors are supposed to do. They're supposed to negotiate and have conversations with through the proper channels, through the ambassadors and State Department of the United States, through the executive branch. That's how you really conduct foreign relations here. We don't go to the people like that. That's breaking protocol big time. He's also trying to recruit soldiers. He's also trying to recruit Americans to try to go fight for the French Revolutionary cause. So let's watch this clip from the John Adams series dealing with this concept.
This is the end of monarchy! The end of tyranny! King Louis is dead! Long live the French and American Republic!
Now that war has been declared between your country and Great Britain, we must remain neutral. Ambassador Genet, the United States is a new and independent nation. It is in our best national interest to keep ourselves apart from affairs to which we have no attachment.
Surely the cause of France is the cause of America, of the world. A threat to France is a threat to America. And we have a treaty, Mr. President. A treaty made when you were at war with England.
I remind the ambassador that our treaty with France was made with King Louis. The King's murder renders that compact no longer binding.
Ooh.
Thousands of your people have called themselves our brother. Since I landed in America, I have found many willing to fight.
You will refrain, Ambassador Genet, from any further efforts to recruit our citizens to belligerent actions. I will not allow you to outfit privateers to join in your war against England.
It is not for you to tell me this.
Tread carefully, sir.
The people will command me, as they command you.
Ambassador Genet.
You will hear from me again, sir. And then I will speak to you with a million voices, and you will obey.
Famous French diplomacy.
Mr. Jefferson, Ambassador Genet has taken leave of his senses.
That's an extreme rhetoric from Ambassador Genet. Granted, he's disappointed by Washington establishing this proclamation of neutrality. That's what happened. Through the suggestion of Hamilton, Washington will proclaim America's neutrality in this situation regarding France's war with the European powers. You can see it here. It's very plain. Whereas it appears that a state of war exists between Austria, Prussia, Sardinia, Great Britain, and the United Netherlands, and France on the other. That's who France is against. The duty interests of the United States require that they should, with sincerity and good faith, adopt and pursue conduct friendly and impartial towards the belligerent powers. And it was outlined in the clip, right? It is for the best interest of the nation, this growing, young nation. And Jefferson, you saw him, right? He's putting his hand, his face in his hands. He seems embarrassed by this position. Genet seems very disappointed, where he's going to, I guess you could almost say, threaten, Washington, in a sense of like, I'll get the people on my side, which, that's a big no-no. Don't do that. Don't break that protocol. But that's, Jefferson recognizes this. You see in this primary source here, when it comes to letter to George Washington, his opinion on suspending treaties with France, he recognizes that slick Hamiltonian argument about, when Genet says, hey, we signed a treaty, right? We helped you in your American Revolutionary War against Britain, and now it's time to pay it back. And Hamilton brings up, right, this idea that, in the consultation of the presidents on the 19th, instituted the Secretary of the Treasury took the following positions and consequences. France was a monarchy when we entered into treaties with it, but it has now declared itself a republic and is preparing a Republican form of government. So Hamilton's argument is that our treaty was with the king when France was a monarchy. Now that the government has transitioned to this republic, that treaty is null and void now. So this releases the obligation of the United States to France. Jefferson, in this letter, if you pause it here and you read it, he is against this. He's asking, Washington's like, well, what's your opinion? And Jefferson says, I don't buy Hamilton's argument, and we should obligate our relationship with France. See right here at the end, upon the whole, I conclude that the treaties are still binding, notwithstanding the change of government in France. So, just because the transition government doesn't mean that these treaties with France, France itself, not necessarily with the French particular form of government, that obligates us to support that. But Washington is not going to accept this explanation, and so he's going to say, nope, we're gonna remain neutral. We're gonna stay out of it. And it could be considered a very wise decision, but it's going to upset Jefferson and his party. And then it's going to get worse. Because Hamilton is still going to push for a pro-British approach, right? He keeps us out of the war with France. He rationalizes or justifies why we should get out of the treaty with France, and disassociate us from that obligation. But he also wants to foster that relationship with Britain commercially. And there are some other issues going on here. British are, they're at war with France, but they're also kind of imposing their will against us. What is going on? The Treaty of Paris of 1783 required that the British pretty much abandon the western frontier, right? All that territory from the Appalachians to the Mississippi River, that they should abandon their forts, over time and relinquish that control. They didn't. They didn't leave. They were supposed to get out of the Ohio River Valley, and they didn't leave. And more Americans are watching this. They're becoming more aware of this, and they're saying that Britain is not abiding by the Treaty of Paris. They're also starting to seize American ships, and that is again threatening our commerce. Regardless, I mean, they're at war with France, so they want to protect that. Any ships going to France, they'll try to stop. So the idea here is, let's try to chill the animosities brewing between the United States and Great Britain. And also, again, according to Hamilton's plan, his economic perspective, let's try to foster trade with Britain. So Washington is going to send John Jay over to Britain to negotiate a treaty. And this is where we get Jay's treaty. John Jay is going to return, and the treaty is, there are some benefits from it, but it's really one-sided. It really doesn't accomplish what was intended. The British aren't really, they're not going to really leave the West, the Western frontier. It doesn't really address that too much. But it does do this. In Article 1, there should be a firm, inviolable, and universal peace and a true and sincere friendship between His Britannic Majesty and the United States of America, and between their respective countries, territories, cities, towns, and people of every degree, without exception of persons or places. It also establishes Britain as our primary trading partner, our favorable trading partner. It's going to give Britain more, we're going to defer to Britain as our primary trading partner relative to France. That's Hamilton's doing. That is what he wants. That's what he believes is the key to our economic prosperity. But the American people, Jefferson, they're going to consider Jay's treaty as to an extreme treasonous. That this is a betrayal of our obligation to France, of our revolutionary principles. This is ludicrous. What is going on here? And here's one quote from the Republicans here: "Damn John Jay! Damn everyone that won't damn John Jay! Damn everyone that won't put lights in his window and sit up all night damning John Jay!" Jay's treaty is going to become very divisive in the American domestic front here. It is going to further entrench the Federalists in their party. It's going to further entrench the Republicans in their party. This is a major development here. We see here this letter to James Monroe from Thomas Jefferson. Mr. Jay's treaty has at length been made public. Now the people know about it, they've been reading it. So general burst of dissatisfaction never before appeared against any transaction. Those who understand the particular articles of it condemn these articles. Those who do not understand them minutely condemn it generally as wearing a hostile face to France. Right there, what is this? This is Jefferson saying, like, those that are in the know, these political elites, they look at how this is a terrible treaty, that it is one-sided in favor of Britain. It seems to favor a particular political interest and economic interest, as in Hamiltonian interest, regarding Britain as a favorable trading partner. And in general, those that are, common people, they're going to see this as a betrayal to our revolutionary brother, France. This last is the most numerous class, that would be the people, the American public, comprehending the whole body of the people who have taken a greater interest in this transaction than they were ever known to do in any other. It has, in my opinion, completely demolished the monarchical party here. What does he mean by the monarchical party? He's talking about the Federalists. Yes, the Republicans would describe the Federalists as monarchists. It was not a term of endearment. It was a very terrible insult to describe the Federalists as monarchists. What does that mean? That means that they're British. They want to return to monarchy. They want to return to what we lived under, were imposed under by the British Parliament and King, back before the Revolution. That's some heavy language there. But he seems to be enjoying it, right? He's all like, "Oh, I love it," right? The people get it, the public opinion is against the Washington administration. All right, this is an opportunity for the Republicans to take advantage of this. It's completely demolished the Federalists. So let's check out this clip here regarding the Jay Treaty, the reaction by the people, and how Washington has to deal with it.
Now, the vote to ratify the treaty negotiated by Mr. Jay with Great Britain still stands at 15 in favor, 15...
Which, by the way, that's wrong.
Hellhounds are in full cry. They say I have sold this country to England, that I have sided with the mad English king or the French Republic.
Slanders and libels, mobs, seditions, and then the hissing snakes, the burning torches and haggard horrors of civil war.
My desk overflows with memorials, petitions, addresses, resolutions, remonstrances from every corner of the country, all urging me to refuse my signature, declaring I'm a traitor because I've sided with a mad English king over the French Republic. Chief Justice Jay informs me that he could steer a course from one end of the country to the other by the light of his own burning effigies. I do not approve of everything in that treaty, but at least it keeps us out of their blasted war. I know what it is to be unpopular, Mr. Adams. I am weary of the task. Most weary.
Remember that Washington was unanimously elected president twice. He's extremely popular. He's extremely trustworthy. But look at that. Notice how Adams described, right? The mob, right? Slander, libel. We are seeing a concern, but the people are burning Washington in effigy. They're waving French flags, by the way. They are adamantly, aggressively against Jay's treaty. Obviously, the Jeffersonian Republicans, right? They're promoting this opposition. They're doing it for, of course, political circumstances, right? Political advantage. But they also agree on principle that the United States should support France, our revolutionary brother, and the people are, again, they think that Jay's treaty is a betrayal, and it's weak. It's weak. You saw Washington here, right? He's like, I don't even agree with some of it. But what is the key? Neutrality, keeping us out of the war. That is his purpose. That's he'll suffer through this. He doesn't want to. He doesn't like to, but he will do this to keep the United States out of the war in Europe. And of course, Hamilton's going to support that because he also agrees with Washington's on that issue, but also because it's foster trade with Britain. He's also seeing it from an economic perspective. So Jay's treaty is extremely divisive. Foreign policy is becoming to dominate the Washington administration. It's causing a lot of problems. This French Revolution is influencing and impacting our own, domestic relationships and internal political structures. But again, Washington is going to keep us out of war. All right. Washington's going to serve 2 terms. Again, setting a precedent, right? Remember that 2 terms. Washington is going to be like, that's it. He's also getting old. His health is really starting to deteriorate. And, he's also, but also not just necessarily because of that, but because Washington says, you know what, that's it. 8 years is enough. But before he goes, he's going to say farewell. And very important that you know the farewell address, at least major points of it, these 2 major points of the farewell address. A little bit of trivia. Hamilton wrote he wrote the farewell address. It's really long, by the way. It's really long. It doesn't really come down to it. I mean, you even look at these points and it's very texty. But what does Washington warn us about, right? These are typical with some of these presidential farewell addresses. Kind of like, hey, after all this time I've been in office, I gotta give you some insights here. Let me give you some warnings. And Washington's warning is no political parties. All right. I've already intimated to you the danger of parties in the state, with particular reference to the founding amendment on geographical discrimination. Don't think about that, right? Geographical discriminations, as in like a party that represents a particular geographical region. Say like one for North, one for South, right? So that's a little insightful. But that these factions they fuel themselves. They are inspired by personal vendettas and could threaten liberty and stability. And the focus of public policy would be based on the self-interest of these factions, right? It goes back to that. It goes back to like that Federalist 10 argument about the mischiefs of factions. So he is adamantly against political parties, which is ironic because under his nose and pretty much in front of him, parties formed. Hamilton, his own Secretary of the Treasury, his virtual right-hand man, founded the Federalist Party. His former Secretary of State, by the way, Jefferson will resign as Secretary of State, really as a protest to this. He's going to found the Republican Party, the Democratic Republic. And so political parties exist right there, right when he writes this, and too late. The party system is established, and we'll get into that directly in another video series here when it comes to the early republic. So check that out. But the other warning that he has is avoid entangling alliances. Let's clear this up, by the way, because some students tend to take this very broadly. He does not mean to be completely, absolutely neutral. We're not proclaiming a total neutrality here, as in like, do not engage in any relationship with foreign powers or foreign interests. Farther from the truth. What he's arguing against is signing on to, obligating the United States into these permanent political alliances. He's warning against the United States signing these treaties that will obligate it to fight in these perpetual European wars, right? Europe seems to be always at war, always fighting each other, always, Britain trying to preserve the balance of power, France getting the idea to try to expand its territory, anybody with some incentive to destroy each other over the slightest border change. All right, you see, the great rule of conduct for us in regards to foreign nations is extending our commercial relations to have with them as little political connection as possible. So Washington warns against not only permanent alliances, but he tells us is like, hey, it's okay to foster commercial relations, to engage in commercial trade agreements, because the United States economy depends on that. We need to trade for manufactured goods. We want to export our raw materials. That is essential to our economic prosperity. Those are okay, right? Temporary alliances in the sense of negotiating treaties and recognizing borders and recognizing territorial gains as part of typical events and situations that may develop between two powers, right? That's okay. But to permanently ally with some European power that could then suck us into another war that is detrimental to the stability of the United States, avoid it. So remember, under Washington's farewell address, avoid political parties, too late. Avoid entangling alliances, avoid permanent alliances with other political powers. Okay. And remember, he proclaimed neutrality in regards to the French Revolution. And as you go on in this course, does the subsequent administration in the remaining of this 19th century into the 20th century, do we abide by this? Do we follow this advice in avoiding these entangling alliances? So consider that, think about that as we move on, right? Think about our foreign policy and like, do we adhere to this? Do we adhere to this? Right? Again, avoiding political alliances, not absolving us totally from any foreign relationship at all. Okay, so that's the key there. Okay, we're gonna skip this and get back to it. But I wanna take the opportunity to do some comparison between points of view, perspective. The French were inspired by the American Revolution, but not just the French. While connected to the French, we have the Haitian Revolution. Right? Toussaint Louverture, a former slave, he launches a revolution against the French landlords, French planter aristocracy there in Saint-Domingue, which will become Haiti. And again, he's doing this out of inspiration by the American Revolution, but now it's here in the Western Hemisphere. And so it starts as a slave revolt, and it turns into the Haitian Revolution. Now, where does the United States stand on this? Now remember, you're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. In regards to the French Revolution, Alexander the Man Hamilton had recommended to Washington to not support the French, to keep us out of the war, right? So we can foster relationships with the British and of course not destabilize our young nation. Jefferson, on the other hand, recommended to Washington to get involved, to fight and support our revolutionary brother against the other European powers. But what about the Haitian Revolution? Because Toussaint Louverture is going to contact the United States and be like, can you help us? Can you, revolutionary brother, can you help us? Right? Here's Hamilton in his letter to Timothy Pickering. Now, it is February 9, 1799. Some time has passed, but let's see where he stands this year. The provision of the law is ample, but in this, my dear sir, as in everything else, we must unite caution with decision. The United States must not be committed on the independence of San Domingo or San Domingo. No guarantee, no formal treaty, nothing that can rise up in judgment. It will be enough to let Toussaint be assured verbally, but explicitly, that upon his declaration of independence, a commercial intercourse will be open and continue while he maintains it, and gives due protection to our vessels and property. I incline to think the Declaration of Independence ought to proceed. Okay, where's Hamilton going on? Right, so I'll help you all out here. Okay, we have to be, he's basically saying like, hold up, let's be pragmatic about this. Okay? Caution with decision. He says, must not be committed on the independence of Santo Domingo. Not committed, right? Not, we're not going to formally recognize it, right? No guarantee, no formal. Hold on, but we could engage in trade relations with this prospective new country under Toussaint, Haiti, through commercial intercourse. You see there, right? And as long as you can protect our vessels, we can start there, and then we can maybe, consider potential political support. I incline to think the declaration ought to proceed. Let's start with that, and then we can go from there. So while it is not Hamilton proclaiming political support similar to Jefferson's political support of the French Revolution, I think we can make an assumption, we can make a very safe assumption that Hamilton is open to this idea, to supporting the Haitian Revolution. It seems open-minded here. All right. And yeah, we can get that. But let's head on over. It's, again, commercial trade, very similar to his, in regards to the French Revolutions, like, hey, trade. All right. Let's head on over to Thomas Jefferson. So we have to say now his letter to the Marquis de Lafayette, by the way. All right. French Revolutionary brother, helped us out in the American Revolution, is leading a more moderate group, a faction in the French Revolution, but he's getting a letter from Thomas Jefferson about the Haitian Revolution because that's technically a French colony. France has to deal with a colony rebelling against it. Just like the 13 colonies rebelled against Britain. Well, here we go. So it's June 16, 1791. So yeah, almost a decade before Hamilton's letter, but let's see where Jefferson stands on the issue here. Now remember, recall, Jefferson has been adamantly supportive, a major proponent of the French Revolution, to get the United States engaged in that support for France in its war against the other European powers. So let's see what he says here. Behold you then, my dear friend, at the head of a great army, establishing the liberties of your country against a foreign enemy. May heaven favor your cause and make you the channel through which it may pour its favors. While you're exterminating the monster aristocracy and pulling out the teeth and fangs of its associate monarchy, a contrary tendency is discovered in some here. A sect has shown itself among us who declare they espouse our new constitution not as a good and sufficient thing itself, but only as a step to an English constitution. The only thing good and sufficient itself in their eyes. So, to give some context here, what is he saying? He's like, he's telling the Marquis de Lafayette, like, hey, I support your French Revolution, but you know what's happening here, man? He's talking about Hamilton. He's talking about, man, they're supporting the British. Meanwhile, what are you doing for your colonies? They will be lost if not more effectually secured. Indeed, no future efforts you can make will ever be able to reduce the blacks. All that can be done, in my opinion, would be to compound them with them, as has been done formerly in Jamaica. We have been less zealous in aiding them, lest your government should feel any jealousy on our account. But in truth, we have sincerely wished their restoration and their connection with you, as you do yourself. What? Wait a minute. Hold on. Let's understand what Jefferson just said here. Here he is saying, Marquis de Lafayette, I'm with you, my revolutionary brother, and yes, get rid of aristocracy, get rid of monarchy. Awesome, man. We got your support. I'm so with you. And these monarchists in here at home, I can't believe it, right? They're so pro-British and not gonna willing to support our revolutionary brother. I mean, what's going on here? Hey, by the way, are you gonna you're gonna quash that Haitian revolution, right? Because yeah, we they need to get back in line. What? What? Hold on. He's favoring the French Revolution, but he's undermining and opposing the Haitian Revolution. I wonder why. Think about that, right? Why would he be supportive of one revolution and not the other? The Haitian Revolution is inspired by, the French Revolution, but you also have it inspired by the American Revolution. Wait, what? He wants to restore the colony back to, it needs to learn its place. It needs to recognize the authority, and that is its mother country. Think about these perspectives on the Haitian Revolution, the ironies of it, right? Okay, so that was fun. Meanwhile, Adams is going to be elected president in the election of 1796. After Washington says 2 terms and I'm out, we're going to get actually a competitive election here. Yeah, we're not going to approach this like the first 2 elections, first 2 presidential elections. Yeah, everybody's all like, everybody's cool. Washington's president, right? Nope, no question. No, let's go. Now it's all like, ooh, look at the electoral vote here. You have Adams as the Federalist candidate against his BFF. I'm sorry, his former BFF, Jefferson. They were the best of friends, and they went their separate ways. And a lot of the dealing with Adams leaning more as a Federalist, and obviously Jefferson becoming the father and founder of the Republican Party, the Democratic Republican Party. Let's always remember that. It's actually really close. Look at that. Adams was 71, Jefferson was 68. Oof. Where is Adams getting his support? You notice there in the Northeast, in New England, obviously Massachusetts man there, but some split there. New York is very key, but Jefferson gets more in the South and in the West. His home state of Virginia, although 1 electoral vote goes Jefferson's way. That's pretty close. Wow. So we have a competitive election here, and Adams is, yes, he gets the majority electoral vote, but it seems that support for the Federalist agenda is wavering. But I think that has a lot to do with what? Jay's Treaty, right? Context here. Right? Meanwhile, Adams, when he becomes president, gets to deal with Washington's mess. By the way, that's going to be a pretty common theme in American history. The second terms for president, those that have a second term, that's when it doesn't really go very well for them, right? That's typical. And whatever mess they leave, the next president has to deal with. And that's exactly what Adams has to deal with. He has to deal with the French Revolution continuing. It's become a real mess. It's the chaos in France. We're not really sure who's in charge anymore. But at this point, it is Monsieur Talleyrand. He's basically running the French government. He's not running it very well. It's really corrupt. And because France and Britain are at war with each other, they're also imposing their will against American merchant vessels. And that's threatening the securities of not only our American commerce, but also our American citizens. So not cool. So Adams sends a delegation. He sends over John Marshall, Elbridge Gerry, and Charles Pinckney to negotiate with Monsieur Talleyrand. But they don't even really get to meet Talleyrand. They are stopped by these agents of Talleyrand who inform the delegation here that if they want to meet with Talleyrand and get any concessions, they must first pay a bribe. They obviously reject this. They're like, this is an embarrassment. This is not how good, formal, respectable business should be. That's not how you conduct it. So let's watch this clip from the John Adams series. Obviously, we love the John Adams series, where Adams is going to consult his vice president over this situation.
Through his agents, Monsieur Talleyrand indicated that for negotiations to proceed, a sum of money was first required for the pockets of the French. For the pockets of the French government and its ministers, that the price would be $250,000 for himself.
A sweetener, Monsieur Talleyrand calls that. And a loan of $10 million to demonstrate our good faith.
Wow.
If Monsieur Talleyrand has been indiscreet, it would be wrong to ascribe blame to the entire French government.
Monsieur Talleyrand is the French government.
I cannot account for such effrontery. Unless our envoys had some part in this mistake?
Mr. Marshall vouches for the account, and I know him to be a man of his word. I am left no ground on which to expect our diplomatic mission to be accomplished on terms compatible with either the safety or the honor of this nation. So we must shield ourselves behind a wall of strength. Congress is prepared to grant my request to armor merchant vessels and to fortify our harbors.
And? Well, that's not all, is it, Mr. President?
Should the need arise, we must be prepared to defend our borders with an army, yes.
Wow.
And to that end, I can think of no man better to lend the notion gravity than General Washington.
General Washington?
Well, he will exercise great caution in deploying it.
He will be a commander in name only, you must know that. You cannot expect him to take the field at his age.
I know nothing of the sort, Mr. Jefferson, no.
General Washington will defer to Mr. Hamilton as he always has. The result will be a provocation of the most immense order, both here and abroad.
And what precisely is Monsieur Talleyrand's unbridled contempt but a provocation?
War has been this administration's policy from the beginning. To pretend otherwise is disingenuous in the extreme.
If there is to be a war, Mr. Vice President, it will be France's doing and not mine.
Mr. President,
Jefferson is holding on to his his association and preferences for France. So he's, you could even argue that he's rationalizing Talleyrand. I mean, he even questions the integrity of the delegation, right, led by John Marshall, which, by the way, a little bit of trivia, John Marshall and Jefferson are cousins, and they do not like each other. Jefferson is a Republican, John Marshall's a Federalist, and that's not really the reason why they don't like each other, although it just adds to it. They personally do not like each other. They don't get along as, as family members. So there's some personal bitterness there. So to have him question the delegation, yeah, you see it from a much more personal situation, but understand that Jefferson's the vice president. He was the former ambassador to France. Adams is reasonable to seek his advice, but Jefferson is again concerned with that the Adams administration is more pro-British, that he's deferring more to Hamiltonian policies and preferences, and Jefferson is just not supportive here. And what is Adams to do? So Adams is going to request and be granted by Congress funds to build up the nation's military, not just an army, but a navy. John Adams is considered the father of the United States Navy, and it's right here. It's to build these ships to prevent the French from seizing our vessels, to protect our American merchant vessels from the seizure of these French ships. And so what's happening is that the United States will be engaged in an undeclared war, by the way, this called the quasi-war, where it's really just skirmishes between naval vessels. And it's an undeclared war, but the Congress will recognize it. It will authorize Adams to address this military situation, but the Congress never formally declares war here. So this goes to Jefferson's concern. There is no formal declaration of war. Why are we building up an army? Why are we building up a navy? Jefferson is not very fond of standing armies and navies. And this is why he's apprehensive. But Adams is the commander-in-chief. He is responsible for protecting the interests of the people. That means not only domestic, but also abroad. So he's doing what he can to protect those interests, but he also has the Washingtonian principle of trying to keep us out of war. He does not want to get us sucked into a European war, especially with France. Doesn't want to do that. So he has to tread a very fine line, but he can't sacrifice our integrity and our dignity to someone corrupt like Monsieur Talleyrand. Right? So what does he do?
Through his age.
Okay. Well, domestically speaking, there's some this XYZ affair is going to shift public opinion away from France. The American public is going to be they're going to catch on to the XYZ affair, and they are not cool with it. They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Remember how adamant they were when it comes to the Jays Treaty and trying to support? It flips the script. Now the American public is on the Adams administration side, and they're like, that's not cool. No, France, that's not how you treat America, man. And they're really getting behind the quasi-war too. They're, when it comes to war, the American public tends to favor the incumbent administration and get behind the commander in chief. But the Federalists want to take it further. They want to ensure the law and order. They want to ensure national security. And so they are going to propose the Alien and Sedition Acts. Let's start with the Alien Act. The Alien Act is going to, in a time of war, when there, whenever as you can see there, shall be a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government, or any invasion or predatory incursion shall be perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government, and the president makes any proclamation, the president can deem those that he thinks are a threat to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed or deported as alien enemies. The Alien Act is going to have two major provisions to it. One is going to extend the required amount of years to become a citizen, to become a naturalized citizen. That is going to, of course, try to, discourage any of these potential foreign, spies or anything like that to become a citizen and try to undermine the administration, undermine the American government. There's an ulterior motive there, but we'll talk about that. But the other provision is that it empowers the president to essentially target any immigrant, right, that could be a threat to the United States interest and national security if we are at war or we are engaged in some military situations with. He can have them deported. Wow, that's we have to consider some constitutional implications here. Is that within the bounds of the president? Is that within the bounds of Congress? They'll probably argue that, well, it's a time of war, it's a time of conflict. So yeah, when it comes to that, liberties and we'll have to take a step back to national security. Okay, that's reasonable. But where do you stand on that, right? What matters more? This is where we get law and order versus individual liberties, right? Freedom versus national security. What takes precedent? What should be primarily protected and encouraged here and defended? And then you have the Sedition Act. And here, if we're in a military situation, right? If we're at war or we're engaged in hostilities with the foreign power, well, we want we want stability, we want law and order, we want everyone to get behind the administration. We can't have disorder, we can't have dissension, right? We got to be united. Well, how do we do that? The Sedition Act will prevent any measure, right, with intent to oppose any measure or measures of the government. Any person shall unlawfully combine or conspire together to oppose any measure or measures of the government. They shall be deemed guilty of a high misdemeanor. Okay, that makes sense. I get, okay, we don't want anyone disrupting the military operations of the United States, especially in a time of war or in a time of military conflict with a foreign power. Seems reasonable, right? It's a little, getting extreme here, but then there's another provision. That if any person shall write, print, utter, or publish, or shall cause or procure to be written, printed, uttered, or published, assist or aid in writing, printing, uttering, there's a lot going on here, publishing any false, scandalous, and malicious writing or writings against the government of the United States or either house of the Congress of the United States or the President of the United States with intent to defame the said government or to stir up sedition within the United States or to excite any unlawful combinations therein or for opposing or resisting any law of the United States, that person can be arrested and detained and charged with felony. What is the Sedition Act prohibiting? It is prohibiting criticism of the federal government. It is, any criticism against the president, any criticism against a federal officer, that would include a representative in Congress, say, like a House representative or senator, Supreme Court justice, federal agent, right? An executive, federal agent of the executive branch, the vice president. I mean, wow. Any laws, any policies? That is what could that be in violation of? First Amendment, free speech, free press, petition. What is? Wow. Hold on though. At war. Hold on. We're at war with France. We're engaged in this quasi-war with France. I mean, we need unity. Again, we go back to national security, individual liberty. What matters here? Right? These are very controversial. The Federalists are in charge here. They're dominating. They're a majority in the House. They're the majority in the Senate. And Adams is, he leans Federalist. He subscribes to their platform. He signs this in the law. Why is he doing this? He figures that we have to be united. We have, I'm at war with France. I have to, or in this quasi-war with France. I want to try to prevent us from getting more engaged. I want to secure the peace here, and I'm going to try to do this. I'm commander in chief. The Republicans are going to seize this. The Republicans are going to jump on this without question, and this is going to cause a lot of disagreement, a lot of divisiveness in between the two parties. And the American people are, they were cool with the Federalists, but when they see this, they're like, that's not cool. I don't like the sound of that at all. However, Adams is going to be up for election in 1800, and he is going to, spoiler alert, lose to Jefferson. But what's interesting is that he is able to secure peace with France. He negotiates the ceasing of hostilities between the two powers, and he gets credit for it, but not in time to secure re-election in 1800. His former BFF, his vice president, is going to win. We'll get a little bit more into that. We'll talk about that in the next series, in the next video series, as we deal with the first party. But yeah, this, let's understand something about the foreign policy of Washington's and Adams' administration. It's the French Revolution that is going to be the main element there, right? It is the Federalists being pro-British. It is the Republicans being pro-French. And it is going to be a mess. And arguably, foreign policy is going to be the main divisive component between the two parties. That is what's really going to be dominating the administrations of Washington and Adams when you look at it as a whole, right? Yes, there are some domestic issues that we talked about, but foreign policy is going to be divisive, right? You have Jay's Treaty, right? And then you have the XYZ affair. Jay's Treaty is going to incite the animosity toward Britain and the Federalists within the American people, the American public. But then XYZ fair is going to flip the script, and the American public's going to go back and be, they're going to be disagreeing with France. They're going to support the Adams administration here. So it really comes down to foreign policy issues with France. that dominate the early Republic administrations here. All right. I hope everybody understands all this. All right. You know, it can be a little here and there when it comes to the political aspect, but we're going to have one last series with the early republic, and that's going to focus primarily on the first party system and with closing with the revolution of 1800. I'm sorry, the election of 1800, if you want to do that. But all right, we'll see you then.